chairman of the Lake Lane Republican Party caucus from 2012 to 2014. Was a state board member, Republican Liberty Caucus, Lawrence County, 2013 to 2016. Member of the Lawrence Farm Bureau, Lawrence County Councilman, South Carolina Economic Development Institute graduate, 2015. Chairman of the Lawrence County Public Works, 2015 to 17. Member of the Lawrence County Health, Welfare, and Public Safety Commission, 15 to 17. Chairman of the Lawrence County Park and Tourism, 17 to 19. Lawrence County Planning and Intergovernmental Affairs, 17 to 19. Certified Bitcon Professional, hello. Member of the National Rifle Association, another hello. As of today, he's on the committee in the House Medical, Military, and Municipal Affairs Committee since 2020. Our guest is an 8th generation South Carolinian and resides in Lawrence, South Carolina with his wife Kelly and 2 children. That's not all about this gentleman. South Carolina House Representative Stewart Jones represents the 14th District since 2019, a conservative voice in the House since elected to the House, and is the primary sponsor of many common sense conservative bills in the House. Example, H3042, Second Amendment preservation. H3126, unlawful federal mask mandate. 3356, any institution of higher learning removing the names of historical figures are to lose all general fund appropriations. Here's another one. This is just a few. House 3358. Any local government that removes historical monuments are subject to a fine of $25 million. Okay? And one last one. This one is going to be interesting to 3493 is allowing the South Carolina voters to verify their votes using blockchain technology. I have no idea what that is, but you might be able to tell us what that is, okay? So, Tylee, that's something you're looking at. He's running for re-election in his district, and boy, I sure hope he makes it. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome a very conservative House member, Mr. Stewart Jones.
Y'all, I want to thank you so much for having me tonight. Normally on Tuesdays, we get done in the State House a lot earlier, and so I was expecting to be here earlier today, but I left the State House as soon as we got done with our work there and headed over here. And so to tell you a little bit about myself, I mean, that was a lot of my, I guess, my resume in government and that kind of stuff. But my grandmother actually grew up, her early childhood she spent in a place called Hemingway in Indiantown, not too far from you here. And her family, my great-grandfather had a massive brain tumor. He died. They had a farm, and my great-grandmother didn't know what to do. So on December 25th, 1945, she took the 5 girls to a little place in Clinton, South Carolina called Thornville, which was a lot like Connie Maxwell. It was a place for children, an orphanage, a school, and you know, our involvement with Thornville, that set a path moving forward. My mom taught there. I went K through 12 there, and it's a Presbyterian-based Christian school with a farm and everything. And but I tell you that story because, you know, lots of times in life, I mean, life is hard. You know, you never know what is going to happen in life, and really, it was a blessing in disguise, though. My grandmother became a teacher. She went on to a lifetime of achievements, and she's still luckily living today, doing really well. So I got involved in politics, I want to say, in like 2007, 2008. I heard a guy speaking, and he reminded me of my grandfather, a guy named Ron Paul. And, yes, and he was talking about, you know, all this, we're borrowing this money from China, and we're involved in all around the globe, and all the debt that's on our children. He was an advocate for the gold standard and our Constitution. And so it really inspired me to get involved. I got involved on his campaigns, and a couple years later, I decided, you know what, I'm going to approach my county council about the Bill of Rights, about standing up for the Bill of Rights. President Obama had signed into law the indefinite detention acts in the NDAA of 2012, I think it was. And this was really, I look at that point, you know, because what it said essentially is that they could detain a American citizen without trial and jury indefinitely. And you look at everything that's going on today, you know, you look at the whole situation, people are being held without due process and these types of things, and it was really it was just a trampling of our Bill of Rights and the foundation of our country. So I went to my county council members and I said, you know what, we need to stand up for the Bill of Rights here at the local level. We keep looking at Washington and we keep saying, you know, the problem is up there, we got to fix Washington, and then the rest of the country is going to somehow fix itself, and that's not it. We got to fix it from the ground up. And so that inspired me to get involved. I ran for county council. There was at the time, we had a progressive Democrat who had been the chair of our county council for really 12 years. He'd been on county council for 24 years. And I went to him and tried to get him to help me with some stuff with standing up for our Bill of Rights, and he said, we don't care about the Bill of Rights at the local level. The only time we mentioned the Constitution is when we're sworn into office. And so that really told me everything I need to know. I said, well, I'm going to run against you. And so he laughed and said, you know, okay, whatever, kid, you know. And so we beat him 60%. We won 60% of the vote. And that was really monumental. It started the shift in Lawrence County, South Carolina. And so over the next 5 years on county council, there were these battles. You know, I fought to get audits at our local level, just basic audits on, let's say, credit cards, you know, getting the check registers online so that the public could view where your county is spending money. We had credit cards. They had issued credit cards to employees in the county, and we found out from an audit that we did that 21 employees weren't even supposed to have those credit cards. The big thing, and this was huge, this was, I fought and fought, and I had to get a new administrator in the county to help me to get these audits. But the big thing, we had a phone and data audit. Basically, we got a consultant company to come in and to look at all of Lawrence County's phone lines, data lines, everything we were doing inefficiently and that kind of thing. And they came to a county council meeting, and I'll never forget, it was 2 weeks into the audit, and they said, we've got a significant finding we need to tell you about, and we want to announce it publicly. And they said, we have found a single data line in this county, old T1 connection, that our county had not used in a decade. And we were paying $3,300 a month for that line, $3,300 a month. The chairman of the county council at the time, he said, whoa, halt the audit, don't touch anything else. I had to make a motion to continue the audit in that public meeting, and luckily I got 4 out of the 7 votes on council to continue the audit. We continued that audit, and Lawrence County, whose budget really is about $21 million a year, we saved $77,000 a year just from that single audit in Lawrence County. So when we look at election integrity, when we look at what's going on right now with our elections, I have done it at the local level. I have seen, you know, the obstacles we were against. And, you know, a lot of it is, we often think, you know, we've known somebody, you know, and there's members of the community we've known our whole lives. And lots of times people don't want to challenge that person. You know what I'm saying? They don't want to, that person may have been on county council for 30 years. The chairman who was our new chairman on council, he was also on council for a very long time as well. And so, but the reason I'm telling you that is because that was incredible. We had to, there's a YouTube video, if you go look up Stewart Jones, I think it's Stewart Jones Goes Wild or something on YouTube. And basically what happened in that meeting, you know, the chairman of our county council told our sheriff to escort me out of the meeting. And the reason I got upset in that meeting, and I beat my foot. I said, "This is their government. This is their government," and that's what I said. And he looked over at me and said, "Bailiff, escort this man out." You know, and it was the law, but it was the sheriff he was talking to. But he was disrespecting people. The community came to that meeting and were speaking in public comment time about why we needed to continue the audit, and he was trying to shut it down. And so, that was a really critical point. I saw what we need to do. So what did I do? I'm an IT guy. I mostly have done IT support. I've done some development, but I said, I can't get our county to put all this information on our county website. First it was just our agendas and minutes. They didn't want to post the agendas and minutes. But then you had all these other things like the check registers, credit card statements, that kind of stuff. And I said, you know what, if they're not going to post it, I'm going to buy lawrencecounty.us, and I'm going to build my own site there, and I'm going to start posting all this information. And so I went to the county offices and took professional pictures, of all of our department heads, of all the contact information. And so at the end of the day, the county adopted my site as our county website. And so, so when we think about like competition, sometimes you've got to do those things, I think. You've got to challenge those authorities, and you've got to just do it. Like Trump has done. You just do it. Put the blinders on, go forward, do it, win. And they're going to pick up on it. They're going to adopt what you're doing. So that's kind of, I'm telling you about where I'm coming from here. Okay? So in 2018, up in Lawrence County, we had a representative who stepped down from his position. He had some health problems, and I decided to run for that seat. And at a four-way primary, we won the four-way primary and avoided a runoff and everything, which was incredible. We won like right at 52% of the vote in that primary. And so I won the general, of course, and we went on. And let me tell you this: there were some of the things the gentleman was talking about here. He was talking about judicial elections. He was talking about the new tax reform that we just passed. Some of these things, and let me tell you this: some of the things, well, I'll tell you this, they don't go far enough, of course. But the good news is that we are turning the tide. Let me give you an example. I have spoken with people that have been working for 50 years to try to pass the heartbeat bill. 50 since Roe versus Wade. You think this is an achievement that took us 50 years, and yes, it's being fought in the courts. And I hate that aspect of it, but it's part of the process. When I put up these provisos during the budget, fighting against masking our children, forcing vaccines on people in South Carolina, every one of them was challenged in courts. And they went through the Supreme Court. We won 2 out of the 3 Supreme Court cases. And that should mean something. And then you have a federal judge who was appointed by Barack Obama steps in and says, you know what, we're going to override your state. We're going to tell your state what to do. And that's,
Can they do that?
that's unfortunately until the states stand up, until we take back our 10th Amendment rights, 9th and 10th Amendment rights, these federal judges are out of control. And that's why it was so important. In some of these circuits, President Trump was able to get a lot of new judges in. In our circuit, the 4th Circuit that we're in, we have a majority of the judges are Bill Clinton and Barack Obama judges. And that's why we have a hard time. We can win cases in other circuits often, which is why we'll jump on those lawsuits as opposed to challenging things in our own circuit. And so that's a pretty crazy thing. The judicial elections, let me tell you how crazy this is. When I first got elected in 2019, it was a special, I was in a special election that I was elected in April of 2019. The first time in South Carolina, like John was saying, we are one of 2 states where your General Assembly, your legislature elects the judges. We're one of 2 states. Virginia is the other one. It's a very old way of doing things. And what I mean by that is there was a time when all of that power was invested in your legislature, and it made sense, as opposed to a king. You get what I'm saying? As opposed to And in many ways, the governor, putting all that power in a governor. And so South Carolina has done this in an old way. Now, my first judicial election in the General Assembly, I was astonished, y'all. Our Constitution, our state Constitution, says that if one member objects to unanimous consent of electing these judges, that's where you can't get a roll call vote. If one member out of 124 objects, then they can't do it. Then they have to have a roll call vote, okay? They said we don't care, and they kept going. They ignored our roll calls. There were about 4 or 5 of us that stood up in that room and were yelling roll call, roll call, roll call, and they went right ahead. And that right there told me how bad the problem is. So let's go further. Let's keep going here. Where are we now? The latest judicial election, which we just had last month, we had 37 elections, and we got a roll call vote on every judge. And so it's improving. Now, here's what we've got, and what John was talking about is he's exactly right. There's a problem in the courts of equity. There's a problem in our family courts. My heart broke when I've heard some of these stories, when I've talked with some of these parents, good parents. I have 2 children, and if somebody took my kids like that, I can't tell you what I would do. I mean, I don't. It's criminal. It's evil what they've done to people. And so here's how we got to change it. We've got options. We've got bills. We've got many ideas. It's like the school choice options we were speaking about a minute ago over there. Right now there are 2 with judges, for example. We can have the governor appoint the judges with the advice and consent of the Senate or the General Assembly. And we can also have popular elections of judges. Texas, for example, has popular elections of judges. I'll be honest with you, there's pros and cons to all of these things. There's pros and cons to it. And let me give you an example. In Texas, they have no limit on campaign contributions. You can give a judge $1 million in Texas. And then if, hopefully, there would be something, a bias, if that judge had to rule on something that person was involved in. But yeah, that's something to think about. That's something to think about. Let's talk about Second Amendment. Let's go over to the Second Amendment stuff. We have last year, and this is what I'm getting at here. The General Assembly is being pushed. We are pushing them further to the Constitution. We are pushing them further, really, to the right in many ways. And it's not perfect. It's not perfect. That tax bill the other day is not, it's a step in the right direction. It's not my bill that completely repeals income taxes. But we can get there. If we can keep making those steps, we're going to get there. Second Amendment. I want to talk about that for a second, because what we did last year, we passed 2 Second Amendment bills that were critical. One of them, the first one, was a open carry bill. And let me tell you, the open carry aspect is not important. That's not really what's good about the bill. What's good about the bill is that it eliminated the CWP, your concealed weapons fee. And it also used the language that I had put in the Second Amendment preservation bill to stop any kind of federal gun grab, Joe Biden gun grabs. That's what was really good about that bill. And then we turned around and we passed constitutional carry. Ultimately, constitutional carry is the goal. And what that simply says, if you don't know, constitutional carry, it's not the Wild West. Many of the states that have constitutional carry have stronger private property laws. So if you carry on somebody's property where you're not supposed to in those states, the penalties are much more strict. But constitutional carry simply says that someone 18 and older in the state of South Carolina who doesn't have a criminal record, who doesn't have a felony, doesn't have to ask the government permission to carry a handgun. That's all it says. It doesn't even apply to long rifles. Anybody can carry a long rifle basically right now. but that was critical. The open carry bill, of course, was signed into law. It passed the Senate, was signed into law, and the constitutional carry bill is in the Senate. I'll be honest with you, we don't have the votes to get it through the Senate right now. If everybody could call your senator, and your senators, I'm not sure how many districts we're covering right here, but if you could call them and tell them to pass constitutional carry in South Carolina, it's so important, especially when we have people like Joe Biden in the White House. There was something else you had mentioned that I wanted. Yeah, you got me thinking about it.
Should I do with Sergeant Schultz?
I've thought a lot, and going back to the tax bill, I've thought a lot about this stuff in terms of like football. Okay, we can throw Hail Marys and we can miss passes and not score at all, and actually lose ground. That's what has happened often. While the left has incrementally taken and eroded our freedoms. That's what's happened in America. The way we can undo that is let's incrementally go back to the Constitution. Let's incrementally go back to God. Let's get back to the foundations in our country that made our country great. History. Let me tell you this. We found out that they removed in Charleston, the city of Charleston removed the Lee Memorial at the Charleston School of Math and Science. They removed the Lee Memorial. We've written letters. We've gotten the Attorney General involved. They are taking the city of Charleston to court if they don't restore that money, if they don't put it back. And part of that right there, let me tell you, the state Supreme Court ruled on the Heritage Act, and part of it wasn't good because they basically said the 2/3 majority is unconstitutional. However, a simple majority is constitutional. So the Heritage Act was upheld minus the 2/3 majority, the supermajority part. Our history is so important. When they took down Calhoun in Charleston, and let me tell you, I went down there and I talked with Washington Light Infantry. That was it was really a great area though, because if the group that owned that property had said, we want to fight it, they could have stopped it. We've got to help those organizations. It was a group, I went and met with a group of 80-year-old veterans down there who were trying to protect the monuments on Marion Square down. What I'm saying though here is in our General Assembly, it's not perfect, but guys, we are seeing the push. We are seeing the wins for liberty. We can talk about election integrity. Let's talk about everything with that. I got a call from my elections officer in Lawrence one day. She said, Stewart, somebody called from the state and they're wanting to bring some drop boxes by. And she said, I said, well, what did you tell them? And she said, well, I asked them, where are they going to put them? And she said, well, they said they were going to put them about 10 feet from the front door. And she told them, well, if they can make it that close to the elections office, they just need to come on in. And so we rejected them in Lawrence. But this process, what we've done, so there's a number of bills. I started filing bills for this in December of 2020 during our filing period. The good news is that a lot of that is coming to fruition now. We're going to get audits of our elections, okay? And the tricky thing is, and I'll just tell you this, I don't think we have the votes to get audits of 2020. I have the bill to do it. I have a bill called the RAIN Act, which is Restore Election Integrity Now Act. And some of the things that are in that bill are being adopted in 2 other bills right now. And so we're going to see audits moving forward For sure. So we're working on that right now, and we're working on ways to make our elections more secure. I can tell you, I stood on that floor, you guys. This was in, what I'm trying to remember the month this was. It might have been August of 2020. I stood on that floor and I asked one of the Democrats who was trying to get, remove the witness signatures and just make it a free-for-all, universal ballot, universal voting, all under the guise of COVID-19. I asked them, what else is coming down the pipe? It seems like you guys don't care about legal votes. You don't care about actually counting the people's votes here. And Democrat, one after another, went to that podium and called me a racist. For about 6 hours. You can go back and watch the ETV video. For about 6 hours, they said, Mr. Jones, you've never walked a mile in our shoes. You don't, and it was amazing how COVID-19 has become this catch-all for just everything.
Everything. Everything.
For CRT, for, let me tell you this. My kids were in public schools. Okay, my mom was a teacher for 41 years. She taught in both public and private schools. And in April of 2020, when everybody was on the Zoom meetings and at home learning, we overheard a teacher telling our 5-year-old at the time about why socialism was a good thing.
Oh my God.
And she was using a book, the way she was doing it, and then she incorporated why the teachers went on strike. And we're standing there in the kitchen thinking, why is she telling this to 5- and 6-year-olds? They don't even understand what she's talking about. Why is... We pulled them out, we homeschooled for a year at that point, until we could get them in a better local school. But that was the best thing we ever did, homeschooling, y'all. I'll tell you, education is, and that's why we've got to have the school choice. I understand there's different ideas on it. There's the tax credit method for basically school choice, and then there's also the ESA bill. The good news is that we're going to have school choice. It's going to happen, okay? And at first, don't get me wrong, I don't think it's going to be perfect. There's probably going to be about a 3-year period where we're trying some of this out. But just like all those other things, I feel like the country is going to collapse, but South Carolina is ultimately going to be okay. If we keep pushing and we keep going in the direction we're going right now, I think we're going to be okay. Something that's really important that I've learned along the way too, I want to say this, it's not just what we're fighting for, but it's how we're fighting, how we stand. We've got to stand the right way for the right things. And so, yeah, I'm happy to take any questions at this point.
You've got a lot coming, Stewart,
Yes,
so get
yes,
ready.
sir. Yeah. Okay, yes. I'll tell you, there was a divide in Lawrence County over Linwood. I'll tell you that. Yes. Yeah, and that's the bottom line. And I'm not gonna let a Georgia Democrat come into our state and take over.
Good for you.
Back in 2009, she and I both were in Washington. We were the ones that our grassroots were the ones that were targeted. She did a great job.
Yeah.
And the Myrtle Beach Tea Party. So we were the two groups that were being targeted. But when I heard what was happening, especially in Lawrence, because it was, she's not a person that easily gets fooled. So I felt if she got fooled by Linwood, what were you guys gonna do? Because she's such a backbone up there, especially with Jeff Duncan and, but you guys will work it out,
I
right?
hope so, Jerry. I hope so.
I hope y'all do, because I know she's a very religious, strong, good person.
Yeah, I agree.
But-
I agree.
Pertaining to Linwood, he did the exact same thing down here, and it was a mess, complete mess, so.
Stewart. I just have to say, you know, I have followed South Carolina politics for many years. While I was in DC working for Central Intelligence, I still kept my eye on what was going on down here. And I have to say that you guys did a remarkable job last year during session. You accomplished some great things for this state, and a lot of people don't understand exactly what you guys did. And even the representatives from Horry County, they were in lockstep, and they had conservative ideas, and that was very evident by the way they voted. And I just have to thank you and your colleagues for what you've done for the people of South Carolina. Thank you, my friend.
Yes, sir.
We're gonna try to keep some order in this place, okay? So whoever has a question, you know, raise your hand and I'll give you the floor and ask the question. So, you go next and then I'm gonna go. Go ahead.
My name is Bill Wiggin. I want to thank you for standing up for our Bill of Rights. And for our history. Once we get our history, we'll forget who we are one day.
Yeah.
And I got a text yesterday. It says, South Carolina will become Colorado after the SC Senate voted to pass medical marijuana. Y'all get any of that text?
I got you now.
This is how far crazy it's going, you know, not just for socialism, but just right here. We need to hit this hard.
Yeah. I can tell you, okay, so it's very important. Here's the thing. Liberty is definitely a balance, okay? And I think that if a child out there who is suffering, if there's anything that can help that child, one of the big things I fought for is medical freedom. When people were told you can't use ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, I went to the medical association and those boards who were pushing these hospitals. You know, I mean, people died because they could not get the help they needed because the state, there were medical professionals out there trying to stop, and basically it was the medical association board. They sent out a letter trying to push pharmacists and doctors not to prescribe hydroxychloroquine.
Or to get fired.
And try, you know, it just, so my feeling on it, we've got to make sure, let me tell you this, I will not do anything that allows South Carolina to become Colorado. Okay? We're not going to have recreational, I won't ever vote for anything that remotely gives us recreational marijuana. I won't do that.
I got one, Stu. This might be a long one. That's okay.
Yeah.
Voter integrity and registrations is a big issue here in this county, in this district. And I know that the House has presented a few bills, more than one or two, probably 4 or 5, that are directly trying to fix and repair the voting, registration, and election business in our cities, counties, the whole thing, the whole state. Do you feel that those bills that you have presented along with your colleagues in the House will be put into law before 2024? Because I know it's a slow process, and I think you got a lot of people holding back. And in addition to that one, if you can answer that one about the bills you got pending in the House, do you believe that the open primary problem will be also solved before 2024? That's a lot of meat there for you, so
Yes.
have at it.
So to start out, so the open primary issue, we have an amendment to a bill right now, 4919, it's going to have the open primary, closing the open primaries in South Carolina. So let me give you an example here, and this is just, y'all, the founders made our government, and here's the thing. Government is not supposed to move fast. Government is not supposed to just go in and just, you know, do away with our Bill of Rights, do away with our constitutional liberties, do away with those things. The founders made it difficult to pass laws, to pass bills. They made it difficult. And so 3444 was originally filed in December of 2020. It was passed in the House. That's an election integrity bill. And basically what that bill did, because you look at all the different problems, the first thing we had to do is to standardize the policies, procedures, to have a standardization of our election commissions in the state across all the counties. And the reason for doing that is because you would have a rogue county out here throwing drop boxes everywhere, and the state couldn't do anything so you standardize that, 3444. That bill passed the House in, I want to say early, maybe January or February of 2021, and that bill went to the Senate. It passes the Senate, 3 readings in the Senate, on May 18th, 2021. That's the last day of session. Okay? So our session, for anybody who doesn't know, we're a part-time legislature. We meet from the second week in January to the second week in May is when we meet. And then there's constitutional limitations, but there can be special sessions called, basically. And so, so that bill passes the Senate to the very last day of session. It is one of the first bills we voted on when we went back this year, okay? So that bill has now, here's what it came back. It went to the Senate with amendments, so it has to come back to the House. We have to concur with the amendments. We concur with the amendments, and so the governor should sign it into law very soon. That's where that bill, and that's 3444. Now 4919 it's an even more important bill because it deals with audits moving forward. It deals with, I'm trying to remember everything, the voter rolls. It deals with, we have looked, let me tell you how in depth I've gotten, and I'm an IT guy, I like to take computers apart, you know, I like to look and see what we're dealing with here. Something I can tell you, in South Carolina, the ES&S voting machines, now we have seen online, I mean, there's a lot of information out there, but the ones in South Carolina, I think it's the DS200 series, they do not have network connectivity in any capacity. They don't have Bluetooth, they don't have a network card, they don't have Wi-Fi, and we put it into law to make sure it never happens. It's in that 4919, that they cannot be connected to the internet in any capacity. A lot of those things are being addressed right now, and so my hope is that bill, it's going to be up tomorrow for a vote, y'all. Tomorrow. That 4919 is going to be up for a vote in the House. It'll be a long day. There'll be a ton of amendments. There'll be a bunch of pushback. But it's going to pass the House tomorrow, second reading. It'll pass third reading on Thursday, and it'll go to the Senate. Okay? Then we got to put the pressure. We got to go ahead and put the pressure on the senators to be ready to get it through there and get it to the governor as quickly as possible. It could pass if, let's say they pass it with no amendments in the Senate, it goes directly to the governor, okay?
I have a question about that, if you don't mind, I apologize. When you have to pass it back to the Senate, it has to go to Luke Rankin, am I right?
If it's not a judiciary, if it
Okay,
goes to judiciary.
so let's say that you find out and we find out that Mr. Rankin on very, very important bills that you fellas have sent on to the Senate decides maybe he doesn't want to hear it. Maybe he wants to put it off for a year or two. How do you and your colleagues that are so conservative tell us in his district, you better get off the chair? And there's where we miss the boat sometimes here. Because guys are doing good stuff up there, and one man can just drag his feet, don't bring it out of the subcommittee, and it dies. And the stuff that you guys are doing is damn important. So we gotta find out what he's not doing, but we can't really go into Columbia and say, sit in the committee room. So how do we do that, to find out what he's not doing?
Right. You gotta, okay, I can send you the app. You know, there's a State House app where you can follow the bills and everything. And it'll send you updates every place that bill goes, every stop that bill makes and where it goes. And so, but ultimately, I'll tell you, we can withhold, it's, a lot of it's negotiation. You know, a lot of it is persuasion. Because we can withhold a bill that he may want in the House and get something out of it. So, yeah.
Yes, you mentioned earlier on in your speech, you talked about going to federal courts, jurisdictions where you get a more favorable hearing on issues that you take up. Now, I have a question, and I've asked every Attorney General of South Carolina this ever since I got involved with politics. Why does the state of South Carolina, when the state is a party in a lawsuit, and the federal government is who the lawsuit is against in some way, shape, or form, agency or court or something, why does the state not follow the Constitution and when they file that lawsuit? Because they always go to some federal jurisdiction somewhere when the Constitution clearly states in Article 3, Section 2, paragraph 2, that in any case where a state is a party, the original court of jurisdiction is the Supreme Court. There's no question about that. Why do we not follow the Constitution in South Carolina?
We've got to have, and in some degree, let me say this, there's not really many silver linings to this whole COVID situation, but states have begun to stand up again. And really, that's the key. If the states will stand up to the federal government, the federal judges, they can't stop us. That's what, if I was the governor of this state, I would say, come into this state. If you want to try to come into the state and force a vaccine mandate, do it. The South Carolina National Guard will be on board.
Well, my question was, why does not the state of South Carolina follow the U.S. Constitution and file that suit with the Supreme Court as the court of original jurisdiction? Why do we go through these federal?
It depends on where it's picked up. So you look
No,
at.
the Constitution doesn't give that option. The Constitution says, I'll quote it, here's the one sentence. In all cases affecting ambassadors, other public ministers, and councils, and in those which a state shall be party, the Supreme Court shall have original jurisdiction. Ain't no ifs, ands, or buts, or go shop for a different judge there.
Yeah, no, it's a good argument. That's a good argument. What's that?
I don't believe in that.
I think they know.
I think the Attorney Generals know, because I've brought that question to every Attorney General for the last 4 Attorney Generals.
Gail, you got the floor.
What's going on in Columbia with the women in sports bill?
Yeah, I mean you look at that situation and how does, I think it was 5 or 6 Republicans in the House Judiciary Committee vote down that bill.
Right.
Yes, 6 of them.
You know, how's that?
Yeah.
The good news is it's coming. It's coming. We're gonna get it back out. Yeah, and so there's 2 different bills. Procedurally, I don't know what that other side is gonna pull, but the good news is a few of those have come over to our side. So we may have the votes to, if they try to do something again like that, then we may have the votes to override them now. So, but that's just, I mean, it's common sense. It doesn't, you know, it's Jordan Peterson. I don't know if anybody follows Jordan Peterson, but he talks a lot about controlling language and how these people have tried to redefine, you know, man and woman. It's just, it defies it's completely irrational, you know.
Completely.
Stewart, I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
You were talking about the election audit bill, and there was a lot of discussion about audits after, well, it started, but it's been going on for a while, but after the June primary in 2020, there was some discussion about the voting machines. You said the ESNS machines can't connect to the internet.
Not in South Carolina, they do not have the devices to connect to the internet. Correct.
So the local election commissioner, she came on the one of the local radio stations. I have a show on one of the stations. She came on one of the local radio stations. She said the machines don't connect to the internet. And then there was another individual who was quoted elsewhere as saying that they do connect to the internet. Well, in the November election in 2020, I noted, because I managed the poll in Garden City, one of the polling places in Garden City. The first thing you do is set up it's an off-the-shelf MiFi Verizon hotspot.
That's for the polling booths. That's for the laptops for the polling booths. That's not for the
Not for
voting
voting
machines. That's not for the voting machines. That's for the polling booths.
So, there are different people saying different things
Right, I
about
know.
it.
And
And
that's
it's a source of a lot of confusion.
Let me tell you this, that same voting machine that we're using in South Carolina, it can be modified, and you can connect a network card to it
Okay.
and put it on.
So the Wi-Fi hotspot, in your understanding, is only for the laptops that are in the polling?
Yes, that's correct.
It's not for the machines?
Yeah, which still, let me tell you this, we have an amendment to put the polling books, to have them on paper.
Oh, boy.
We have on that, the bill we're voting on tomorrow, we move into paper, and you know, yeah.
What did you
There's
say,
probably about
Stewart?
15 different things on that bill that are really important. I'll have to send y'all something.
You better repeat that.
What did you say, just now?
Regarding paper.
Regarding paper.
Yes, so the polling books. You know how when you go in, they look you up on the laptop and everything. That laptop's connected to the internet. One amendment we have to the election integrity bill that's coming up tomorrow is to put those polling books to just have, print them out, to have them on
Oh,
paper.
and people can sign
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
That's how they used to do it.
I've got a question about local option taxes. You know how you were talking about the county's budget earlier, and I think you said something like $21 million is a lot of money. Well, do you realize that in this county, the Myrtle Beach Chamber of Commerce had an income in 2020 of $51 million during the pandemic? And this is because mostly due to the state law, the TDF implemented in 2009 as a local option tax that brings all that money, 80% goes to the chamber, 20 goes to the city of Myrtle Beach. Part of that 20% is to bribe voters by giving them a property tax credit. During the time that we were never told there's no cap on that credit. So there's one house at the Dunes Club that receives a tax credit of over $22,000 in 1 year. And my question is, it was renewed for 10 years because of the enabling legislation that was renewed in, I think it was, I was told 2017. Were you there then, and did you vote for that?
Listen, I was on county council in Lawrence then, and I was the only member of Lawrence County Council voting against our local option sales tax. I was the only one there to vote. So I wasn't in the General Assembly at the time, but I was starting the General Assembly in 2019. But,
Well,
let me
it's
show,
called,
let me
it's
hand you
called the
that real quick.
TDF, the Tourism Development Fee, and that
Yeah.
needs to go away.
I agree with you. Yeah, let me look into it some more. And y'all, one thing you said about during the pandemic, everything that was going on with all the federal funding that was coming in. I have voted against every round of CARES funding. I voted against the ARPA funds. And let me tell you, I know some of that money is going to some good stuff in our local communities, but who is paying for it? How are we paying for it? At the end of the day, our children, future generations, we are devaluing our dollar. And so CPAC, this was Saturday, they honored me with the Conservative Award of Excellence for voting against all that federal spending.
Congratulations.
You know, and so I wanted to tell you about that because it is, the states have an addiction to federal spending, without a doubt. And I've got a bill to restore the gold-silver standard, to restore, and the Constitution, Article 1, Section 10, says that gold and silver are legal tender. It's about accountability. It's about people being able to control their value, and government not just being able to print all these dollars and to take, because they're destroying your savings, they're destroying what money is really worth. They're destroying your value. So, yes, sir.
How do you deal with $30 billion in underfunding pensions?
Yeah.
Particularly when you talk about tax cuts and not using federal money.
Yeah, the PIBA system, and there is discussion on the PIBA system. Right now, we're looking at, let me tell you this, I've spoken with a lot of law enforcement who would like to get out of the current system. To be given, to have the option, the alternative, to just, they would be given, money for that, and then they could buy their own retirement. You know what I'm saying? They can invest their own their own money. Somebody else have any?
Anybody have a question here? Because if nobody does, I do.
Okay.
I'm just gonna change the narrative here. Why did you all vote for Convention of States?
Can I tell you something? I'm a John Birch member. My grandfather was a John Birch member, but conventions, I think what we're seeing, and this are even people who have fought it tooth and nail. When Mark Sanford, for example, I think he rescinded it. We made the call when Sanford was in office, and he rescinded it. But people that have been fighting against the Convention of States for a long time, an Article 5 convention, because of the fears of a runaway convention, are starting to look at the situation and say, we don't have a country. if we don't do something, if we don't, and you know what I honestly think? I think it'll get to that point, because right now, I think there's 21 states have signed on to it. South Carolina still hasn't passed, I mean, it still hasn't passed through the Senate, I believe. So, but I think it will get to something, it's gotta be 34 states to actually call the convention. I think it'll get to like 30 states, and the federal government is going to lose their control. When the states, when that many states coalesce and coordinate, that's ultimately, I don't think it'll ever reach a convention point, is, you know.
Well, I think if we follow the Constitution, we don't need it.
That's right.
But we're not following the
That's right.
Constitution now, that's it.
Yep.
I said if.
We're not following it now.
Could you tell me again how you're gonna solve the $30 million tax on the
Yeah, I don't have a solution for it. I'll tell you, I do not have a solution for it. If it was up to me, I'll tell you this. I am for law enforcement, absolutely. I'm for local, I'm for our fire departments, I'm for our first responders. There's a lot of waste, okay, in Columbia that we can cut. That, kind of going back to that the tax bill, y'all, what we're doing, you know, with the tax bill, just to kind of reiterate, and I'm for it, I voted for it, I support it, because it is reducing taxes, and I can support that, but we've got to cut spending. You know what I'm saying? Part of the tax bill is calculated based on growth, okay? So you have more people putting more money in, and you reduce the individual tax liability. You know?
Shouldn't that have been first, reducing the expenses?
Absolutely, absolutely. Last year I voted against $13 billion in the $30 billion budget.
I got another one. I have two small ones, if you don't mind. I know you gotta probably go back to the long drive, so I don't wanna keep you here too long. In one of the bills that you have for the voter integrity and registration and election integrity, the House is considering, already the bill is in place, to allow the governor to give him the authority to appoint a director of elections. And that director would have basically sway over all the county registration and election commissioners in the state. And that's part of the bills that are being presented, or they already have been. Do you agree with that? Or do you think that it should stay within the county or the state election commission? Because this is a new position in Columbia appointed by the governor. So, I mean, if you think it's a good idea or not.
Well, okay, so here, and let me explain that a little bit, because that can go bad, that can be a good thing, it can be a bad thing. For example, during the pandemic, people have asked me the question repeatedly, why doesn't McMaster do what DeSantis is doing? And the answer is he can't. Because in South Carolina, the legislature controls DHEC. The General Assembly controls DHEC. And so in order to make, if we got a bill to do this, that would create a cabinet level position in the governor's office for DHEC. It would give the governor more authority over DHEC. But that can be abused. Let's say Joe Cunningham if he becomes the governor of South Carolina, what is he going to do with that power? Ultimately, I always look at these situations, I look at it as like a pendulum. And we don't want it, we want it to be on the Constitution. You know what I'm saying? We don't want it, if it swings so far to the left, I mean, you know.
And then you get the wrong governor.
Exactly.
I came from Pennsylvania, he closed doctor's offices, I couldn't get to a doctor that I ended up in sepsis and ICU for 2 months for a kidney stone. Because a kidney stone wasn't listed as an essential service.
Wow.
There's friends of mine that had cancer, couldn't get tested to see if their cancer was spreading worse because it wasn't a cancer listed as an essential service. You couldn't work. I still have friends in Philadelphia that their kids are masked. They have to show a vax on their phone and everything else. It's a disaster.
Talking about the confusion that was created in this system, and let me just give you an example. So elective surgeries. There was a constituent of mine that had an elective surgery, I want to say in January of 2021. And they had the elective surgery in January, 2020. Yes. Elective surgery in January 2020. And then they had complications from that elective surgery. And the husband of the wife called me and said, Stewart, I want to let you know that my wife is going to die in our living room. And I have been keeping her alive for 3 weeks on IV fluid. She had had some kind of surgery where she couldn't swallow, she couldn't eat, and the doctors refused to operate on her or even see her. You know what I called? I called Henry McMaster. And I got Henry McMaster on a 3-way call with the husband. And Henry said, you tell the doctor to take her, you tell him to take her now, that there's nothing stopping him from taking her. They admitted her to the hospital immediately. But you think about how many cases out there. I mean, everybody didn't have that call, you know? I mean, it really made me mad, and that's why I've been so passionate about the vaccines and the mask and just stopping all this, you know?
I got an last one for you. If you were able, would you be able to get on the Judiciary Committee, which is where I think you belong personally, or maybe in this group I think so too, and how difficult is it for somebody with your conservative credentials to get appointed to or get on to the Judiciary Committee in the House? Is that a crazy question, or is it something you're thinking about?
Yeah, no, I mean,
Is it difficult? I mean,
honestly,
is it a backdoor deal?
I wouldn't say it's a backdoor deal. I mean, a lot of this stuff, I'll be honest with you, it's like, for example, I voted against $13 billion in last year's budget. That made a lot of enemies, okay? I serve on the 3M committee, which is the only Democrat-led committee in the State House. Because the Speaker of the House puts all the Democrats on that committee. He puts a few strong conservatives. Me and Dick Dabney are on a subcommittee together on there. Sandy McGarry is on there. But yeah, it's kind of a punching bag for us. I'll be honest. Jonathan. Yeah.
Mr. John, you have the floor
Okay, so,
for a moment.
just real quick, and I kind of ran this by Linda just to make sure that I was not going to do anything that was improper or out of context. But let me go back to what Ms. Ann Dunham said just a moment ago about the optional sales tax, which funds our chamber to the tune of $50 million. And then that chamber then is actively involved in campaigns, not only in Horry County, but all over South Carolina. And so this guy is a warrior for standing up for the people. There's no question about it. I've been on the phone with him, and he's prayed with me on the phone. He has wept with me and cried with me on the phone. Okay? He has met me in my hometown. He has, we've gone, you know, he has been there. He doesn't just talk about it. He's about it. He's being about it, not talking about it. He doesn't have, you know, he's got a wife and 2 children, okay? And he is running a business and giving his time to serve in Columbia to fight for us, the people of South Carolina. And I think he's doing a hell of a job.
Yes.
Okay? In a world where people care less, this guy cares more. I've seen it with my own eyes. I've witnessed it. I've been a part of his life, and he's been a part of my life. I love him like a brother, and he needs our help. So I'm going to say this, and I don't want to, if I'm going to offend you, I'll apologize afterwards, and you can, you know, fleece me. But I've been through, you know, I don't know that you can say anything that's been said about me that's any worse than what's been said in this county. So I really don't care, to be honest with you. So I'm going to ask you this, in all sincerity, if you can help this guy out. He's in a primary where he is, okay? And he's got somebody running against him. And he's not a millionaire. He's not wealthy. He's not a lawyer. He has a small business owner, okay? He lives a modest lifestyle. You know, he's not, you know, running around up at the nicest country club. He's not going to the Gamecock Club and having dinners. And he's not at the Palmetto Club. And he needs some help. So if you can give this guy $5 or $10 or $20, it'll go a long way towards helping us in this room preserve our liberty, preserve our freedom, and make a difference. So, I mean, he's going to be in a primary up there where he's going to be in a big fight. And so, you know, if you can help him hang around, he'll give you some information. I know he would appreciate it, so.
Thank you.
When are you old enough to run for governor? Because I'd love to see you as governor, and when you do decide to run, I am 100%, I will trump you up.
So I appreciate y'all so much for having me tonight, and please, yeah, I'll give you my card before we leave. Okay, awesome, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, the first candidate